Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing well tonight. Thank you for joining in. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Alina Gaplu Martinez. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Cross-Cultural Center's Jim Lynn Alumni Relations and Development Intern and Social Justice Educator. I am a fifth year majoring in human biology and sociology, and I will be facilitating this event. I want to pass off to Leo.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Violeta Gonzalez. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the Assistant Director and Center Manager for the Cross-Cultural Center. And I welcome our alumni today, Anthony and Brian.
Thank you, Vio. Before we get started, it is important that we give a land acknowledgement, even though we are virtual. The UC San Diego community holds great respect for the land and the original people of the area where our campus is located. The university is built on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. Today, the Kumeyaay people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions as vital members of the San Diego community. We acknowledge their tremendous contributions to our region, and we thank them for our stewardship. This was adapted from the UC San Diego Intertribal Resource Center. A quick overview about how our Alumni Table Talk will flow. We will start with panelist introductions, where you get to hear a brief background. And next we will move into our roundtable discussions, where I'll be asking some of the panel questions that I've prepared. Please feel free, however, to ask your own questions by unmuting or even putting them in the chat. And lastly, we will have our closing remarks and show you some upcoming events. All right, without further ado, let's get started with our panelist introductions. We could start with Brian. If you could just go ahead and share your name, pronouns, your graduated college and major, maybe what you were involved in as an undergrad, post-undergrad, and then your current role.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. I know it's getting towards the end of the day, so I hope you all had a good one. Maybe first, before I start intros, if you wouldn't mind, since we do have a small group here, can I ask anyone who feels comfortable maybe putting in the chat, things that you may be looking for within this meeting that can help me kind of tailor some of my questions to help you make this more effective for you too, rather than giving these kind of broad generic statements that may not resonate with you. So feel free, anything you're looking for, anything any questions that you may have, please let me know so I can tailor my responses accordingly. First of all, I'm Brian Nguyen. I am a he, him pronouns. I graduated from UCSD in 2007. I was Warren College, and I was a double major in pure math and management science. And in undergrad, I was mainly involved through one of the SAC coalition orgs, UCSD APSA, the Asian Pacific Islander Student Alliance. I was, both a GBMer, and then I was on the board for a few years as well, and then just largely participating in the organization plus some of the cross-SAC kind of activities as well. And then various other kind of just professional activities as well. I also had several internships outside of school, which I can go into further. And with my, post-undergrad, I graduated in 2005. I came into UCSD thinking that I'd be a computer science major. I went towards math, thinking I'd go into grad school, but I ended up going out and became a software engineer instead. And basically, I was a software engineer for about 8 years. I was at a local company from San Diego called Viasat in Carlsbad for about 7.5 years. And then I moved up to Seattle, where I am right now. And I worked for Amazon for about 5.5 years. And now I'm currently at Microsoft. So I've had quite a few different roles within this time span up here. Engineer, I was a technical program manager. At Amazon, I managed other technical program managers. I also managed other software engineers too. So kind of a lot of people management for a while. And then now I'm currently at Microsoft as a product manager. So, with software engineering, doing a lot of coding, with program management, basically managing a lot of large complex projects and programs. And then as a product manager, kind of designing, all new ideas, all new features for all these products that people use as well. And right now I support Microsoft Teams, which, for anyone not familiar, the very similar product as Zoom as well. So a lot of collaboration, chat, video, and a host of other kind of capabilities through that. So yeah, that's currently where I'm at today.
Thank you, Brian. Anthony?
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Anthony Honko. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. Graduated in 2015. I majored in, I believe, applied mathematics. So I did some management science courses as well. And cognitive science. That's what I did for my science portion. And yeah, what I was involved in. So while I was at UCSD, I was also a social justice educator at the Cross-Cultural Center. And I was also an intern at the LGBT Resource Center as the volunteerism and leadership intern there. The club that I was primarily in was Kaibigang Filipinao. But of course, right, like as part of a SAC organization, sometimes I'd join APSA, and I remember one memorable night where it was a game night with APSA, and I won a couple mahjong games. So that was really fun. But of course, right, being heavily involved in KP, I was vice chair finance my last year in KP. And in my first year in KP, I was a gender and sexuality awareness coordinator. So just very involved in student leadership positions. But yeah, so post undergraduate, so I actually was trying a bunch of different jobs after 2 years, and then decided to join the Air Force as a reservist. So I'm actually coming up on my 6th year on my contract. So it's finishing up here. And right now, I am a full-time teacher. Actually, it says here I'm a high school physics teacher. I am actually a math teacher this year, and I'm with High Tech High, which is the graduate school that I graduated in. So I love my school so much that I went back to the school and now I teach 11th and 12th grade mathematics, so calculus and math 3. So yeah, that's how I got to where I'm at today.
Great, thank you, Anthony. Both lovely introductions. So why don't we go ahead and get started with our roundtable. As a reminder, please ask any questions, and I do welcome everybody to take Brian up on that offer and let us know what you're involved in, kind of cater to maybe some responses you're looking for. And I'm going to go ahead and take off my screen. All right, so the first question I have is, what led you to your current position? And this is to both of you, so either of you can start.
Yeah, I could go first for this one. So like I said, so I graduated in 2015. And I was looking to get into professional career and hoping that like after graduation, right, I was waiting out to see like if I would stick in any professional career. And I just was having a hard time figuring out what I wanted to do. But eventually, I got a full-time job with my sister at a manufacturing company called Kabum. And it was interesting, the stuff that they were doing. We were building electronic parts. I was mostly dealing with manufacturing amplifiers, which was really interesting there. And then eventually, I realized very quickly that I didn't want to be on the production line. And one of my friends encouraged me to go and be a teacher. And so this is where I found High Tech High's Graduate School of Education. And literally the application was closing And I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to apply and see if I get in. And by, I guess, the grace of the universe, I was able to get accepted into the program. And the thing is, like, what was happening is a lot of things were aligned with my social justice background, because High Tech High is like their mission is an equity project. And they want to bring in educators who will be anti-racist practitioners, and really focused on, like, how do we make more equitable classrooms. So I felt like a lot of the things that I was doing or did with the Cross-Cultural Center and LGBT Resource Center were things that I was still aligned with. And so I joined their program, and I was in their credentialing program for the first year, where I got my teaching credential. And then last year, I finally got my master's in education. And so this year, I'm in my second year teaching mathematics. So it was really serendipitous on how I became a teacher. I thought I was gonna age and then retire into becoming an educator. But I think this was more prevalent in terms of, like, what was needed in education.
All right, so for me, you all are here. This is an intersection of two different things for this talk, right? This is social justice and STEM. And so my path tried to move in a direction that did indeed keep that intersection. I am very passionate about social justice. While I am not doing work specifically in social justice, I am kind of doing work that is in that direction. Like, basically my entire career, I've moved towards the path of kind of empathy. Like, one of the bases of social justice is that empathy. And so a lot of the things I've moved towards is, like, I talked about being an engineer, but moving towards people management and now moving towards product manager. I basically evolved and kind of moved in a direction where I can continue to kind of give back to other people, right? And with people management, having the opportunity to grow others, to be able to help amplify their voices, and so ensure that those who aren't properly recognized, ensure that they have they are doing so as well. And so, like, I've largely focused on this kind of this foundation of social justice to help me guide my career. The same with product management. I moved into product management because I liked understanding my customers. I liked, using some of my creativity, understanding what my customers needed, and thinking of new ideas to help serve their interests as much as what we're trying to do generally in community work anyway. Like, meet people where they are at in the community and really understand what their needs are and provide them something that would actually be helpful. So everything is kind of grounded upon this root principle for me around empathy. Now, there's a second part of this intersection regarding kind of science and engineering, right? So another, personal passion of mine, aside from, others, is going to be, that logic, that problem solving. And so that is why I kind of went through this kind of route of engineering and stayed in this route, so that I can continue to have these, everyday challenges that will kind of help make me interested in the things that I work on. Now, there's a third aspect of the intersection here, aside from these two, and that's really just ensuring that I'm really starting to focus on providing, having involvement in kind of at least being able to express my my desire for social justice within the spaces I'm in. I know that Amazon, I know that there's, people talk a lot about Amazon, a lot about these big tech companies, right? But the thing is, and I've kind of gone through and debated, should I go into nonprofit, or should I and do kind of that community-based work, or should I stay in tech? And as tempting as it may be, like, to kind of one of my friends told me, like, we need people like you in these spaces, right? So as much as we need people in, doing like very, very good community work, same time, we need people to be outside of that echo chamber that we may be in doing community. And so being able to be there, express it to kind of other audiences that may not be living may not have social justice as a part of their main aspects of their lives is also very valuable too. It's just, you just have to take the journey very slowly and take people along that journey as well. And then finally, the fifth intersection that I'm trying to move towards is really just financial stability. I am a second generation, Vietnamese American. My parents were refugees. I do not have the generational wealth to lean on, for example. And so I do want to be financially stable. I do want to have money. Like it helps me afford things in this capitalist world. Yes. And I do, as much as, I realize the inequities and so on, at the same time, I realize the reality. And so that is why I do stay in tech. I do stay in software engineering, but really I try to leverage my position, my influence to be able to do so in ways that are outside of what we talk about around doing community work as well. So this is how I was able to kind of move in the direction I've been at, and all kind of rooted in the foundation of kind of justice, empathy, and helping others, and while being also helping myself.
Yes, Carl, go ahead and ask your question.
So I have a question. I guess this would be more applicable towards you, Brian, but so I just noticed that like in the tech industry, generally, like there's just a lot within the tech industry that you see a lot of problems. Like some companies choose to like avoid talking about gender issues that have been happening, or they choose to like I feel like in tech there's a lot of like complacency and trying to avoid like impacting certain issues and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, are there opportunities in tech to like actually directly work on like certain issues, such as like I know Google has like one initiative where they're trying to use like AI to make different skin tones show up differently. Like I think skin tones show up differently when like affected in like algorithms and stuff. So are there any specific projects, or do you see a lot of efforts in like the industry to directly work on those issues, rather than just like being someone in tech that is more empathetic, something like that?
Yeah, there definitely is. So the good thing is tech has been moving, in general, tech has been moving towards a more diverse and inclusive environment. Like, D&I has been, for better or for worse, a catchphrase that has been catching on more and more, and people are starting to understand it a little bit more beyond just a phrase here. And so especially in the large tech industries, like with large tech, they are very global as well. And so I think that there's even, going back to the capitalistic nature of things, if you aren't addressing all your customers, any race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, and so on, like you are missing out on customers. And so in order, it paints a picture that helps everyone of, it helps the business if we are inclusive of everyone. At the same time, we're helping, fellow people. It gives that, that capitalist reasoning for doing the work that we do. So there is a lot of that, especially at the large tech organizations. And you gave a good example around kind of AI facial recognition. Now, there has been a lot of, there was recently kind of, I think, a black data scientist who recently left Google, or I forget which company they left because of some of this, discrimination they faced there. So there is certainly, a lot of bias and discrimination, but at the same time, there is recognition that we need people of color. We need, that diversity, that inclusion, because we need to indeed have those people call out that, we are forgetting about these things. When we're training our images for facial recognition, if we don't have people of color, largely what has been done is, you use, white men, for example, as your training samples. So there is this recognition that we do need to have, a diverse field to really be able to ensure that we're capturing kind of all different perspectives in the products that we're developing. And so I actually was drawn to Microsoft because I did know that they are doing a lot of good work in D&I as well. So for example, they do have work being done in criminal justice reform as well. And so that is something that I want, and even in they have like this thing called employee resource group, basically kind of organizations kind of like UCSD with KP, all the SAC awards, for example, where you are focused on ensuring that there is recognition of these kind of minority groups too. And so both internally and externally facing, they are doing this good work. And so there definitely is, you know, there are both the problems and there are also good things being done. And like I said, as much as there are problems, I think it is necessary to have more people there to be able to move people in the right direction. Because otherwise, without that representation, we're just going to be continually marginalized. So, that is the, you can call it, you know, the justification I give myself to make me feel comfortable working with some companies when when sometimes it's not always in alignment with my values. But you know what, like I want to help be there to influence the direction as well. So, yeah.
Thank you for answering my question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for asking. Please feel free to jump in more. Anyone else too?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. This is an open space. Anybody can hop in whenever they feel. Another question that I had for both of you, what experiences during your undergrad were most useful to prepare you for post-undergrad?
Ooh, I can share on this one, Brian. If you're like, I think for me, just the pacing of the quarter system. Surprisingly, right, I know we dread the how fast things are, but in terms of like understanding the pace of things, sometimes companies, right, work at such a fast pace. Where the quarter system makes you feel, if you go into a slower paced industry, that things are like, wow, why was I having such a hard time before, or things are easier. So I think in terms of just like the UCSD quarter system experience, you might find that like, oh, we actually live in such a weird pacing system, that when you go outside of it, you're like, oh, okay, wow, I feel really competent with how fast things are going. In terms of like my experiences as a social justice educator, like just presenting and talking about social justice and really thinking about like anti-racist practices, it really niched me into the graduate school that I went to. And so I felt really comfortable going into my program in my school, where identity and talking about like how that affects my position and power, and what does that mean as a teacher and educator, right? And being self-reflective. It makes me stronger as a self-reflective practitioner and as an educator, to realize that like my own experiences might be the same as my students. And so that builds all that empathy that's needed to be a strong educator. So I feel like a lot of my experiences in KP, as an intern, working with a bunch of different people, right, especially in education, right, working with parents and students and directors and so on and so forth, just the slew of people that you end up working with. I've been able to communicate well with all of them. And so really the soft skills that I've been able to transfer outside of my SJE role, as well as my LGBT internship, I'm able to recognize that, like, all the things that you've done outside of the classroom and inside the classroom. I'm as a math teacher and math major, let's just say all the math I did prepared me to be a math educator as well. It just was an alignment in what I did. So seeing that whatever you do in college, there can be places where those things make it easier in your life. So definitely recognize the work that you're putting in now transfers into the places that you might want to be getting there.
Yeah, so I definitely echo a lot of the soft skills that you gained, in a very similar journey for me as well. I will say that college was so foundational for who I am and where I am today. Like probably more so than where many other aspects of kind of my life prior to that. Both especially my value system. All of you are here. I'm sure social justice is a major part of who you all are at, and so please continue to be in that space, be in that community. Because it helps establishes that foundation for you. And once you're outside of school and you have the opportunities to be more engaged in the real world, this will help kind of having this foundation will help kind of help you along the way so much more quickly when you have this kind of education behind you instead of kind of learning along the way. So in general, what I suggest for anyone is just try to be proactive and get engaged as much as you can. Like for me, I'm definitely kind of like a go person. Like I always want to be productive and all that. But I will say if there was any time to rest, I would say rest after college. Like you have only 4 years or 5 or maybe more or less. Like this college is going to be one of your best times. Like do try to take everything advantage of as much as you can. Be engaged, join organizations, meet new people. I know it's tough during COVID, but all the more reason why I encourage you to kind of push yourself and continue to find ways to be creative and engaged. You all are here at this meeting, so I'm sure that you're already there. But I would push for you to continue to do so because it's a lot harder. Basically, after college, everyone's lives goes their separate ways. So everyone is at completely different stages of where you're at. So this is when all of you are in the same space together. You can all be on this journey together. So make the most of what you can there. Now that's in terms of kind of like engagement. Now the other thing that was really helpful for me was really kind of just building my experience. So when you're moving out there in the world, there's a ton of people in your same position, right? All have good college degrees. You have your grades to compare to. So in order to get that job, I would definitely recommend finding ways to make yourself to stand out from the rest. So for example, finding opportunities to either work or gain experience, practical experience while you're in college. So what helped for me was I did have internships. I did apply to several different places. And it doesn't really matter where you go in the beginning, as long as you can kind of find work that's somewhat relevant to the work that you want to be doing. Like you can start at a super small place, but as long as you start to build that work experience, it'll definitely help make that easier for you to find those jobs after you're done with college. Now, you may ask, what if I have tried to apply to different places? I've gotten rejected multiple times. That's totally cool too. There are other outlets to gain experience too, relevant in the space that you're in. So for example, you can look to do research on campus. I actually did join a research program at UC Leeds, which I don't know if it's still around. But at that time, they actually paid, it was a 2-year program. They paid for a summer stipend for me to live in a different UC system for two summers. And they paid for it all. And it was a pretty good stipend. So I both got very good, valuable experience doing research. I did it in a field that I was in, which is math. So I showed that technical expertise and I got paid for all of it and my housing paid. So, and I got to live somewhere else. So it's a fantastic experience. I know it's a little bit difficult these days with COVID, but do look for other opportunities. Like research is huge as well. Even if you can't get into a program like what I talked about, there is also, the 199 series too, which I assume is still called 199, but you can just do, quarterly research and find a professor and do that work as well. So in general, if you're showing, especially since you're all in technical fields, be able to kind of gain some of that experience in the technical space, that really helps beyond just because otherwise, I was a people manager, so I was looking at a lot of resumes and so on. Otherwise, what I'm doing is I look at all these resumes and everyone is the same. They all show the same projects. In engineering, I was working on building a robot. I made the robot jump and I made it to automate on its own. The field looks completely the same if you're just sticking to your only experience being in college. So find those ways to distinguish yourself and do something that others aren't doing. And it more practically speaking, in the technical field, while your soft skills are good, when people are looking to interview you, they are going to be looking more of your technical skills. So if you're able, so you should absolutely continue to pursue participate in cross-cultural center and all these, and build that passion at the same time. Try to find those opportunities to build it, to gain that technical experience as well.
Oh, we have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. My name's Agad. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm actually a grad student, so I completely agree with everything you've said about being in college, that it's 4 years and they just fly by so quick. That's why I'm back in school. But I kind of wanted to ask more so about the support that you received. So, especially Brian, you mentioned about, DEI becoming like a buzzword and, for better or worse, and we have people in spaces, whether that's tech or academia, who are doing really important work. And to do that work, you need support, right? And that can come in a lot of ways, whether that's like moral support, financial, having people who are in higher positions or positions of power who really advocate for you and go to, really support you in your work. So I wanted to hear from both Anthony and Brian, what support did you find really important to continue to do that social justice work and have that as a focus in your positions as you move along?
I could go first here. I think for me, just picking an organization that like really flat out said that we were going to do anti-racist education. And that definitely was a signal for me that like they found this work to be important and is foundational to how they were going to teach us as educators. And I found that in my classes, right, we were doing identity work, we were doing workshops and classes on how do we uncover student identity and make sure that they feel integrated into the classroom. So part of that is like looking for institutions that do that. But when you go into the classroom or into a different school, so I was in 2 different schools, and noticing that, right, support comes in different ways. So sometimes, right, continuing to have your peers that like completely understand what you're going through, or understand like, oh gosh, this microaggression happened to me today, right? That's part of continuing on this work of social justice. And then if you're in a system or right an institution that values that, maybe finding higher ups that are able to talk about like, oh, I'm interested in doing this activity or this workshop with students in order to build their cultural capital in the classroom, or to build awareness in this. It's like knowing that your supervisors and your principals and directors, right, understand why this work is important to you. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. So, I mean, I've had an experience where, because I present, well, I'm gender neutral in my school, and a lot of the like, okay, cool. Can you tell us what gender neutral sign to put on our bathroom? Right, those like quick microaggression of like, cool, you're going to be our tokenized queer person, and we're like that happens still. And it goes to show that like the work that we do in social justice spaces is that maybe we are still teaching people, and everyone is on a different journey. And so, we have to recognize that our institutions are imperfect, and that's why we're here, because we're here to like hopefully be the person that's there, that's moving the needle, holding that space for our students, or holding that space for ourselves. Right, a lot of the things that I learned at the Cross-Cultural Center is like how to create space and take space, so that these things that are important to us and our identities are instituted in the work that we do. And so, yeah, like support financially is great when your institution is able to like, right, provide money for certain workshops or finding grants and scholarships. But also, right, knowing like the wellness part as well, like social support. It's going to be as messy as it is in the real world, but knowing that you have people, trusted people behind your back, and that you could come forward with these things. I feel like I've transferred to different bubbles per se, but at the same time, there are organizations that are saying that this is work that's important to us. I unfortunately or fortunately like was part of the gay men's course and going into their diversity and equity like committee. I was wondering like how they were changing as an institution, and I felt like, okay, I wanted to be part of this team to hopefully recognize the structures maybe in the organization that we could, you know, make better for us. And then I realized like, oh no, that this group here is about awareness and stuff. So, you know, each place that says diversity and inclusion, it looks different in every organization. So you have to ask yourselves, is this aligned with what I want to do in terms of equity work or that work in terms of like, am I helping people build critical consciousness, or I'm helping people build awareness for these issues? So understanding what those alignments are as well.
Yeah, and so Anthony kind of talked about if you have that support system kind of already in place. So I agree with everything I mentioned. The one thing I'll add is just so oftentimes this work in DEI is done outside of your normal job, right? So it's not part of your job description, and so unfortunately, you know, you will need to kind of get your normal work done, and on top of it, you know, whatever you want to make the most out of in this space, you will have to kind of put in your own time. But it does, you know, so it is up to you to be as proactive about it as you can. But the good thing is you can take advantage of these spaces if they are already there available for you. So I won't go that much more there. I'll go into the reverse then and talk about if the spaces are not available for you. So luckily, you know, the spaces that I have been in, yes, they have been in there, but at the same time, that some of the conversations may not have been, the focuses may not have been as much there. And so, you know, if you are really working from the ground up, you know, as I mentioned, kind of start first with kind of like some of the basis of social justice, right? And that is a lot of the empathy and kind of building like, you know, that community around you. So as you know, typically wherever you do work, you are going to be you're likely going to have a team or people that you work with. So just start first by, you know, developing some of those bonds and earning some of that trust with people. And that's where you start to become more open. So the one thing I'll say is like, just know that you will need to work for it. If people aren't there yet, you'll have to be ready to work for it. And some people are willing to work for it. Other people say, you know what, I don't want to have to educate people, right? And so I have no issues with whatever path that you're on. You know, it shouldn't be our job to educate people. At the same time, it is, for me, it is my best opportunity to influence and gain that trust and do so in a more kind of natural way of just kind of building those connections personally. And so that is how I would reach out to people who aren't necessarily thinking in this manner. And so it does start, it is a long journey, and it is, you know, the impact that you have does start small. It is these one-on-one conversations. You start talking about it to your team, and then you start to, you know, you say, maybe you organize a few events, you organize, you know, certain activities, and then you start to show that, you know what, people are responsive to this. People see that it's valuable. People understand. And then once you've demonstrated this success, then you start to expand even further. So it's a long journey. And on top of it, you know, you have your normal job to do. So I will say that the opportunity is there, but you have to kind of just ensure that you are in that space that you feel safe. And I will say that just because you aren't there to begin with, you do have that opportunity to build that safe space. But again, it just goes back into how much are you willing to put in that work. So, you know, luckily in STEM, you know, people, you know, are technically, you know, a lot of people start to, you know, rely a lot on reason, logic. And so they are definitely a lot more willing to kind of come in with an open mind, you know, understand these new perspectives and so on. So, you know, I've generally found in STEM, people will be more accepting of what you offer out there. But it does take time. So yeah, and it's all just depending on you. You know, my trade-off is I'm accepting of that because I do like the fact that I'm reaching out to people beyond the echo chamber that I have in community. I will also say that if you don't find these safe spaces that at work, it's unfortunate because you spend a lot of your time at work, but at the same time, you can also find that outside of work too. You know, one of the reasons why I didn't want to go into nonprofit is, you know, since I did want to have that financial stability, I told myself, you know, doing some of that community work after my work hours is something that I would find some of that passion, some of that space for myself. So that is the trade-off that I intentionally made as well. But while at the same time being able to kind of work slowly with my own peers, I was also able to have that kind of exposure to the wider, you know, community that I wanted to belong to too. So for me, I try to have a little bit of everything, which I know is a blessing and a curse. So it's all in terms of understanding, you know, what you're comfortable with, and just, you know, and then if in your willingness to kind of go beyond that, it's okay with wherever you're at. So yeah. But I think that was a fantastic question. You do that support network is indeed very, very important.
Yeah, thank you so much for, you know, sharing your insights. I really love this space. This is so rejuvenating, and I've been like nodding and behind my screen, you know. So I've just been like thinking about all the points you've been saying, and Anthony, how you brought up, you know, how you're kind of like the default when it comes to speaking about issues relating to gender or gender neutrality, and so issues like, you know, being the default to, you know, a different identity that space is not really used to seeing is really difficult at times. And I think I'm still figuring out whether I have the bandwidth to like actually, you know, respond in those spaces or actually, you know, take a step back. So I think I'm still learning in that area, but I think also looking for that support and deciding whether these spaces are important and moving forward with that is really important as well. And so, you know, thinking of trade-offs, because I don't know fully if I want to continue into academia, definitely not in the traditional sense of, you know, PI lab, you know, yada, 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 whatever. But yeah, no, so thank you for giving me a lot to think about. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, for another question for both of you, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in your particular field, and what changes do you predict happening in that field for the future?
Ooh, so as a newly minted teacher, I highly suggest people get into the classroom as soon as possible. If you could get a substitute permit and start substituting or even like observing classrooms, you want to get into the classroom as soon as possible. You definitely hear the horror stories, right? Like students that have never been to like in the courtroom, but like decide they want to be a lawyer. They go to law school, they finally get into the courtroom, they're like, I don't want to be a lawyer. And so you don't want to do that to yourself in any industry. You want to like, don't idealize a job, actually get into it and shadow people and see what it's like on a day-to-day basis. I luckily looked for a program that was like really hands-on. So I did a residency program, and I was in the classroom every day, day in and day out. You had to like ask yourself, do I want to do this every day? And I knew that like the work that I was doing, I was like, I love to be with the kids and help them and being able to, you know, see those eureka moments and make them go, oh my gosh, I actually can do this, right? So it's just like my empathetic and helping personality that really thrived in the classroom. So I highly suggest whatever it is that you're trying to do, get experience in it as soon as possible so that you have that information for yourself if you want to continue on and doing it. And then was there another part to the question? Did I forget it? What was the question again, Alina?
Yeah, the whole question was, what advice would you give someone interested in your particular field, and what changes do you predict for that field?
The changes in the field. So right now, right, with COVID and everything, you could only imagine what that has done to the education system. And a lot of analysts and educators in higher education that study education are already thinking like, what are the long-term effects of happening in school? And I'll tell you right now, as a teacher, that like we're noticing that our students feel like their social behavior is lagging about a year and a half. And that's because they've been in COVID for about a year and a half. And so really, I feel a lot of education has really pivoted and turned SEL to the forefront, social emotional learning. And definitely looking at like, how are we building community in our classrooms and making sure that our students are feeling that academic safety. So I wouldn't be surprised if like you go into an education program and maybe they just teach you like how to get your credential and stuff. And maybe there's like a couple of classes on social emotional learning. But I really feel that like you'll get into the classroom and you go, oh my gosh, there's like classroom management that I have to deal with. And you'll see that like your expectations about how your student should be based on their age might be lacking. And so there's going to be, I feel like, this whole generation where we have to prepare them to be back together. So there's these training wheels, I'd say, that have to be put back on and then slowly released per se in the education field. So our students are just like experiencing these different traumas at different times, and everybody's experiencing them. But I think right now, we're experiencing it in such a different way. So I think we're going to have a shift in education, and I felt it too when I started teaching. So that the classroom is going to be a place where students are really looking for that sense of belonging and that sense of well-being before they're even able to get them in the zone to teach and stuff. So I definitely see that education is shifting in terms of how do we focus on that human aspect of our students before we get them to that high academic place, because there's no teaching if you don't feel academically safe.
Yeah, so I mentioned a few things before. So in order to get into the space, similar to what Anthony said, kind of get that hands-on experience in whatever ways you can. I mentioned building that technical skill set, ensuring that you have that technical strength in addition to the soft skills. But I will say that technical will probably be a little bit, depending on where you go. Like some places have a little bit more leeway for say interns, because they understand that it's all about just how well interns can learn and new grads can learn. Other places will want to see some amount of kind of technical strength behind it. So continue to build that. So that's in terms of kind of how to get there. And then I will say, very much from a kind of a job prospect perspective, since I was hiring people before, just ensure that you're just on top of your applications. You're kind of submitting your applications on time. If you can kind of find a network to build with, it's often a lot easier to get a job rather than just kind of cold applying, submitting, clicking a button online. If you can build that network and finding someone, say, to refer you or so on, so wherever you can, try to engage with people in your field, one-on-one, and then establish that relationship with folks so that they can help build that relationship. So for example, like attending these events, even if you don't know people, already, attend these professional events, and then try to, talk to people after the event, or talk to them during, or find their contacts and engage with them there and see if they're willing to kind of help you along the way as well to establish that network. Now, in terms of the direction that things are going, I know that, Anthony and I are only able to kind of cover two different fields, like with tech and then with education. So I will quickly cover tech in that, with tech, basically we continue. I talked about how much like tech in general is just becoming more and more globalized, right? So we do need people everyone in that space. So there is basically a very high demand for anyone in tech overall. And especially if you look at your big companies, there's going to be a high demand for a diverse set of candidates too. So I mainly say just to be able to kind of keep up with the changes, just continue to push yourself to be involved, to apply and actually just be there. Luckily in tech, it's a little bit easier in the well, it depends on your tech too, I guess. Like hardware, for example, is kind of going by the wayside for software. But I digress. Anyway, so in general, though, for anyone, not just in tech, I would say that just be aware that things are so rapidly changing, and don't, I guess, just be willing to continue to keep up with all the changes and be aware of what's going on. Knowing especially that tech is one of those reasons for the rapid changes. Just ensuring that you're doing things like, keeping up with technology and how it impacts your field, for example. So just ensure that you're constantly adapting and that you're not, say, kind of becoming complacent in your field, and just being able to embrace that change is something that I think any field in general is going to experience. So, and I know that's kind of more of a soft skill that I'm referring to, but the reason why it's so important to do so is because if you don't, then you're going to be left overwhelmed, or you're going to be left kind of like left in one spot while the rest of the world passes you by, right? And so if you're not able to kind of adapt to it, then you may just not find happiness. You may not be able to find ways to adjust to it well either. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you both for your responses. I'm going to go ahead and close. Here we have our social media, how you can connect with the Alumni Roots program. First, we have our email and then our Linktree, which also takes you to all of the ways to get connected to our Alumni Roots mentorship program. You can also join our Hug Network, which is our student network. Brian and Anthony have been both talking about networking, and this is definitely the place to start it. During undergrad, you can make these connections a lot. And also we have a lot of our alumni on there as well that you can connect with and find mentors. Also want to highlight that both Brian and Anthony are signed up as mentors. So if you are looking to connect with them more, please visit that Linktree and sign up for our program, and you can get connected with them.